Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
Man, more Ravnica Allegiance. Cool stuff hitting us from like every color. Where to start?
Well, what about with white? I mean, Angel of Grace is like as good a place as any, right? Because that's a card that it's only the beginning, but it's also often going to be the end.
Angel of Grace, 3WW. You know, the classic. This is a problem. Well, not a problem. It's a very good Angel casting cost historically, right? There have been a couple at this casting cost, and it gets us what, a 5/4 flying, but also with flash.
Yeah, and when Angel of Grace enters the battlefield until end of turn, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. So right off the bat, you get yourself an Angel's Grace. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have the split second component, but you are you're in pretty good shape. It also doesn't have the part about not losing the game or anything, you know. But like, basically, you're not going to die from damage, unless, you know, if you just drop this down, assuming no other foul play. And then, in addition, it has an ability from your graveyard. You can pay 4 white, and exile Angel of Grace from your graveyard. Your life total becomes 10.
Yeah, this card is really cool, right? So, first of all, it's cool from kind of that, you know, just reminiscent sort of thing. Like you said, it's very Angel's Grace to it, and I guess that's appropriate to its name, right?
It's got a fair bit of Archangel Avacyn, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of stuff going on. I think it's going to make this a popular card to play. First of all, 5/4 flying flash for 5 is in the conversation to begin with, right? And then
it has to be. Oh, definitely. I think a 5/4 flying flash is already a for real candidate.
And then these next two abilities, I think like that ability to not have you die is real cool. And then the ability from the graveyard is really cool, right? So imagine you just like had this in a deck that had like Search for Azcanta or something. You're just like randomly binning your Angel of Grace. It's just like kind of a free effect. Like you could do this like at your opponent's end step, right? Yeah,
absolutely. And it's it doesn't count as playing a spell, so even if they have a counter spell, they don't stop it.
Yeah. Really cool card. Where do you think this is going to be? Blue-white control decks? Do you think green decks are going to want to do this with like a little Selesnya action?
Well, so one of the challenges with a blue-white control deck, even though I think it's got some use there, one of the challenges is the competition is Teferi. It doesn't mean that you won't do it. It's just that I think that basically everybody else is even more in the market for this because, like, just the opportunity cost being lower. Like, for instance, if you're playing some sort of picture those big red-white decks that played a lot of Angels. If you drop this as, you know, you can just be doing whatever you're doing earlier in the game. If you're playing against a lot of people, you keeping 5 mana open is actually just devastating, right? Like in terms of if they drop Teferi, you can just drop Angel of Grace and attack.
Yeah.
Like, that's like she's incredible against Teferi, right?
Yeah, well, one of the things I like about this, just if you're just talking about Angel of Grace in the context of one of those red-white Angels decks, like the Brad Nelson type deck, Brad would tell you that he thinks that one of the reasons that deck fell off in popularity was because it's not great against Jeskai. And if you like look back at the Grand Prix, you know, Eli Cassis won that Grand Prix with Jeskai, and you know Brad was unseated along the way. But I think if you had, like, at the 5, the ability to go, like, Angel of Grace to challenge them, even if they've got a counterspell, then you, like, untap and land your Lyra Dawnbringer or something. Like, you get an open to like, double up against their permission spells, especially if they're, like, you know, on the off turn when they're casting Teferi, like, you know, you could even have the untap on the stack, right? Or, you know, you do it at some time when they don't have any available mana. And then all of a sudden, you shift the things that they can answer you with, right? You shift away from an Essence Scatter, and, like, you're kind of forced them to have, you know, a permanent removal card or, like, a bounce spell or something. And maybe on your own turn, you've got you've got some kind of action that will protect you there. Like maybe you've got a hexproof machine or something like that you can bring online.
One of the places Archangel Avacyn saw play was in green-white, and I think Angel of Grace could have a lot of value in green-white. The ability to function as sort of a quasi-haste creature, being kind of like sweeper protection, even if she's not making your other stuff indestructible or anything. I mean, the fact that Angel of Grace can let you have a very powerful permanent the turn that your opponent plays Deafening Clarion or whatever kind of sweeper they play. If they're gonna play Cleansing Nova and you've got 5 open and can just drop Angel of Grace and keep the pressure on, that's awesome. Pretty attractive.
Awesome. And I think in green-white, I think my guess would be a different style of green-white. So the hallmarks of green-white, kind of Selesnya and the post, 2018, 2019 kind of third Ravnica informed kind of Selesnya have been away from explore creatures, right? So either we've seen Selesnya tokens, which is, way more white than green generally, or even the other one, which is like kind of like Selesnya Angels, has good low drops, but not a lot of explore creatures. I think Angel of Grace, if it were in a dedicated Selesnya deck, might want explore creatures because, I mean, come on. Jadelight Ranger and Merfolk Branchwalker just randomly binning this card.
I don't know, man. I think you're putting a little bit more stock into that exile ability. I think 5/4 Flying Flash is where it's at.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. And one of the things that you can do is just draw extra lands with your Explore creatures and leave Angel of Grace on top. That's a thing you can do. But it's just...
there's nothing about her that other than the synergy with the graveyard. It's fine. I mean, some of the Explore creatures are pretty good, but I think that it's a more natural pairing, putting her either in basically either of the other two styles, both as a topper for like if you sideboard her again in a token deck. I think it's like a powerful different dimension and a way to like keep the pressure on when your opponent sweeps the board. Or if you just play her in like an Angels deck or some kind of deck full of good cards. Oh yeah, and in Celestial Angels, she's just one more good card. Like they want to use the removal anyway on all your threats because you have so many must-kill Baneslayers, as it were. And I think that her coming down at the end, like her just being one more good card at the 5 spot. I mean, she's just really powerful as a 5/4 Flying Flash. I think that there's a lot of reason to think about Orzhov. Some sort of a board control-y Orzhov deck. Godless Shrine, a lot, and plus just so many black and white cards, stuff like Mortify and whatnot. There's a lot of reason to look at black-white, and so far we haven't really seen a lot of competition at the 5 spot in black-white decks. And I think that her coming down as an additional threat, I mean, those are some decks that frequently have extra incentive to want to have creatures where it makes sense. And Angel of Grace being able to, I think Orzhov can play a little bit of a flash game of sorts with stuff like Vraska's Contempt and Mortify and Angel of Grace. And I would not be surprised if there's something in the black-white mid-range space that Angel of Grace really opens up. Plus, if you're taking damage from your card draw in some way, Angel of Grace's ability, both sides of it are more likely to come into play.
I love your idea about incorporating Angel of Grace into Orzhov. I mean, Orzhov was one of the decks that I was just kind of brewing around with already. Not actually, like the main thing that unlocks it, in my opinion, is the lands, like, Godless Shrine or perhaps a little Guildgate action there, because we can do just like kind of the night thing, History Benalia, and get both of those 2-drop knights online. All of a sudden, they're really good. But you don't need to have mono knights, right? Like you can have different stuff on the top end, even though, your early knights are 3 power for 2 and protection from yada yada and getting online with History Benalia. You can have like kind of a phase 1 assault, get your opponent low. Your opponent has to answer with some sort of sweeper, and then bam, Angel of Grace while they're tapped out. I think that could work.
Yeah, I think that having more dimensions of attack could go a long way for helping Orzhov. But I like the idea of the early pressure of the Knights and then following up with History of Benalia for putting people on the back foot. And so having some powerful haymakers that you can follow up with It just seems like exactly what you want. And, Lyra Dawnbringer before, fine card, but not really what's going on in the format previously for an Orzhov deck anyway. It doesn't help shore up any of their weaknesses. I think Angel of Grace is just night and day there.
Oh, yeah, Orzhov has always
so to speak.
Always been the grinding color combination, right? And I think Angel of Grace is kind of a cool grinder. She's just got a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, a bunch of her stuff is good, but she's got these extra edges that you can exploit some of the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of tactical applications. There's a different white card I'm kind of curious your thoughts on, though. Hero of Precinct 1.
Oh, yeah.
This is that 1 and a white human warrior 2/2. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, create a 1/1 white human creature token.
Yeah, I think that this one is going to be really exciting for Modern. Because this is kind of like a white young pyromancer, right? Like, if you're combining this with Manamorphose, with Lightning Helix, Boros Charm, cards like that, or some other color combination, doesn't have to be red white.
Well, I think still you're really looking at the spells part, and I think it's worse than Young Pyromancer for the most part there. Why don't you just want this with like a bunch of really good gold cards? Well, like creatures too. Like why limit yourself to the spells?
So you could like land a Woolly Thoctor on turn 3, and then you'd have a 1 white creature, a 1/1 white human creature token in addition.
Well, it works even better with the cheaper your gold cards are. Right, like, I mean, it'd be at its best with 1-cost hybrid cards or 0-cost cards like Manamorphose or whatever. But like Hero of Precinct 1, I mean, you're kind of just wanting to generate a lot of value, right? Like, you're wanting to just throw down lots of cards that it's just one more note among many.
Well, I mean, clearly Manamorphose is like the gold standard for this card, right?
So to speak, yeah.
I was thinking, but regardless of if it's a weak young pyromancer or better with cheap hybrid creatures or whatnot, do you see this as a standard card, or do you see this mostly?
Definitely. Are you kidding? Oh, I think it's more of a standard card than a modern card.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. For instance, I think in green white, if you're playing green white, think about how many cards they have that are multicolored. And you want the tokens, and you actually appreciate them anyway.
I mean, marching with some multitudes could be pretty cool with this card.
Definitely, and even just being able to take your quasi mana fixing cards, like being able to, make some of your 2-drop legends get extra value, being able to get when you search up a forest or a plains, being able to get an extra 1/1 out of that. I mean, those decks play so many anyway, and you just don't have to make very many tokens off your 2-drop in Standard before you've gotten your money's worth.
That's true. I guess we can we go to some sort of overrun to combine with that.
Well, the tons. Green White's got lots of that stuff anyway. I guess the thing I'm saying is, if you make a single token, like in Standard, you would play a 2/2 that makes a 1/1.
Oh, that would be good. That would be pretty good, right? Like 3/3 for 2 over 2 bodies. That's substantially, I don't know if it's substantially better than Watchwolf, but it's probably better than Watchwolf, right? And then
it's at least comparable.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you have 2 copies of Hero of Precinct 1 in play, right? Like all of a sudden you have some pretty snowballing abilities. It's a good combination with what if you're red-white in Standard, right? Like,
I think it's great there too.
Deafening Clarion. There's a bunch of cards that you just play main deck that goes with this. Some of the split cards, right? Maybe we'll be in the
Justice Strike.
Yeah, I was thinking like
Tajik Legion's Edge.
Oh, that's a great one. Because like super hasterific also. Like he's just big enough to make Hero of Precinct 1 a hero, right?
It's also not out of the question to do stuff like play Response Resurgence or Integrity Intervention.
That's what I was thinking. Like bad Giant Growth, horrible Lightning Helix might be a great split card to play when you have like a payoff like this.
We might also be in a spot where people end up playing off-color hybrid cards. Because remember, like even if, for instance, let's say you were playing, and I'm not saying you would want to do this, But if you were playing a red-white deck, for instance, you playing Flower actually does give you a gold card. Or perhaps if you were playing with Response, like you just want to play with Response in your deck, in your green-white deck, it counts as a gold card even though you're just using the white side of it. Or to use a more pure example, if you were, and not that you would really do this, but if you played with Fresh-Faced Recruit, it counts as a gold card even if you were playing mono-white.
Yeah, there's like a lot of the split cards in this set. You could do the same thing, like Consecrate or Depose, which are like plausible cards that you might want to play. Probably you'd want to play both sides of those cards if you were going to play them, but they also count in the same way, right?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of incentive to play this, particularly in red-white or green-white. And we haven't seen enough of what this new set might bring for blue-white or for black-white, but it's possible that it could show up there too. I think it's just like a great 2-drop in standard.
I mean, Tajic Challengers work with it, right? Heroic Reinforcements works with it. But Heroic Reinforcements is really good, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and at the end of the day, even if you're just doing stuff like Flower Flourish, Flower helps it on the way in. Flourish is a great payoff for all these 1/1s you've got laying around.
Oh, that's
so. I think this is an excellent card.
Yeah, I agree. This is just classic. Get a little extra for no more mana. It's kind of like a Planeswalker that way.
Let's see. As far as the other white cards go, I mean, are there any that really jump out at you?
Oh, yeah. There are a couple that I think are really exciting, but I think other people might think are really boring. Like Resolute Watchdog. How do you feel about Resolute Watchdog?
I mean, a 1/3 defender for 1 is not inherently that interesting to me, but sacrifice Resolute Watchdog, target creature you could control gains indestructible in a turn. I mean, this looks like a card for a man who is still in love with Omen Speaker.
Yeah.
Or any of those different 1/3s for 2.
It's an Omen Speaker for half the cost. All right. I get you. How about Forbidding Spirit? How about this one?
I mean, Forbidding Spirit, 1 white, 3/3. When Forbidding Spirit enters the battlefield, you get a 1-shot propaganda. So your opponent can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless they pay 2 for each of those creatures until the next turn. So this card is a really exciting tempo play, right? I mean, its body is awkward, but in a world where you're being rushed, and possibly as a sideboard card, but just generally speaking, if you want to just drop this to bridge for your blue-white control deck or your black-white, if you're playing something, and, part of that could be a sideboard, but part of it is just that if you just want to put down a solid body that buys you some time, I think this is a respectable card. I think its utility falls off pretty quickly if people are not if too many people don't play very many creatures. But I'm a fan of this card. It's awkward, but high-powered.
I was just thinking, like, let's say you're on the draw, right? And this could work in a variety of different strategies, but imagine you're on the draw and you are smelling a Heroic Reinforcements coming the next turn, right? You drop this on turn 3, like, you just took this, the wind out of the opponent's sails, or they get put into a position where their, like, attack is really, really awkward. That's the thing, and I think, like, a lot of the time, if you're like, all right, I'm going to buy half of a turn, but then potentially gain an advantage on the table or make a good trade, like, that's real solid sometimes.
The thing you got to remember, though, is that if you're only gaining, if you stop 3 damage through, you're still not good enough that you would really want to play that card, right? So you have to, like, prevent 4 damage to be, like, actually getting a little profit, and you have to actually gain a lot more than 4 because of how much you have to make up for all the times that you don't gain any.
Do you think it's more applicable then in these decks that are just always turning sideways against each other, or do you think it's too awkward in terms of power to casting cost for those decks?
No. I don't. I mean, I don't think it's inherently one way or the other on that. I think it's fine. It's just it's going to end up depending how many people play fast, cheap, aggressive creatures, and the tactical implications are going to be there. It's not that this card is super high powered or anything. I think the card is like playable, solid. It could be really, really dope the more that people play 1-drops and tokens and stuff, but
both of those cards are just interesting to me, just from nostalgia's sake, but I wouldn't be surprised if either of them saw play, because I think they're both, depending on the deck, right, they might be good defensive type cards to play in particular matchups that might be predictable.
Yeah, I like Forbidding Spirit a bit more, but I think Resolute Watchdog could have some moments, Particularly, Resolute Watchdog works well with stuff like Angel of Grace, Like, if you've got, like, some amount of early defense that allows you to later then get utility out of it, protecting the queen, I think that, there's some stuff to like there.
I'm all about protecting the queen. What do you think about Smothering Tithe? Too expensive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smothering Tide is 3 white. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay a 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this to get a mana of any color. So if you put this down and your opponent does nothing, if you haven't done anything either, you're just getting a treasure each turn. That's not good enough. And your opponent even has an option to sink extra mana into denying it. So you have to really to make Smothering Tithe worth it, you have to be in a situation in which you're consistently making your opponent draw extra cards. Because, it's one thing if they are, you're like, oh, maybe they'll just draw extra cards on their own. That might be, and if that's true, they're the ones doing it, and I bet they'll have a bunch of extra cards, and their extra cards worth more than your treasure.
Well,
but, for instance, if you had...
right? I mean...
Right. But if you were in a situation in which, for instance, if you cast something like, a draw 7, you play Emergency Powers, well, now your opponent, unless they pay 14, you're going to get 7 treasures immediately that you can then use to play more cards that you drew off of Emergency Powers.
Ooh, that's really cool. I hadn't thought about that.
So I think if you're going to do it, you got to dream really big. If this one's going to be worth it, it's going to be in some abusive combination type of situation.
Okay. Well, you want to move off of white?
Sure. Yeah. You got a preference of where next?
I mean, so many cards that I think would be good in Modern.
Electro Dominance is a Modern card that screams to be played. X red instant.
Oh, wow.
X damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Yeah. So for 1 mana more than Blaze, you get an instant Blaze. So it's Volcanic Geyser.
Yep.
But then as a bonus, you can play a card that costs X or less.
Yeah, but it's also I don't even know. It's like Bloodbraid Elfish, right? It's really strong. Well,
the place where it's so sick is that you can just Electro Dominance for 2 and instant speed play Ancestral Visions, right? Or play Living Death for 2 mana, or Restore Balance.
Oh, one that's in your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, that's insane.
Yep. And remember, you can do more than 2. You don't have to just spend 2. It's X or less. So you can still get as big of a fireball as you want. It's just that for 2 mana, you can play Balance, just the way Garfield intended it.
I think that this is going to be a very, very potent standard card also. I think it's going to be potent in kind of Jeskai the same way that some of them play Expansion Explosion, and I think it's really going to find its home in Big Red in Standard. I mean, this card is just... Isn't this just better than Siege Gang Commander most of the time?
I don't know. It's pretty different.
I mean, dominance, instant speed dominance into Goblin Chain Whirler, during combat or something.
That's great.
That's like a splatterfest, right?
But you also use 2 cards.
Yeah, but I mean, the implication of the amount of tempo that you're gaining when you do something like that is substantial. For 1 more mana,
I don't know.
Dropping a Phoenix into a block, I don't know. Let's see what happens. Okay. I think this is really, really going to be.
I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying, I think if you just do, for instance, if you watch your Dominance for 3 and play a Chain Whirler, well, you could have just played the Chain Whirler, and that's 3 of your 5 mana. So you spent 2 mana and you did 3 damage, right? So that's fine, but you're not even like getting anywhere. The big thing you did is that by playing a 2-drop and a 3-drop in one turn, you're making your Chain Whirler have flash.
It's not just that, which is also good. But if you can get the Chain Whirler into combat, he can trade up. Not even trade up. He can just slay 4 toughness creatures. That wouldn't.
Yeah, but that's still just flash. That's what I'm talking about. You've built a way in which your Chain Whirler gained flash. I'm not saying that that's bad. It's just it's not so drastic of a thing, you know. Like you have to be getting more value out of the big Expel portion, I think.
Yeah, I think like there's a fair number of decks who want to play cards like Treasure Map and Ezra's Gateway that are going to be happy to have something extra super nice to do with their mana.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
So, but that's not. I mean, first of all, I think this card is awesome. I think that your idea about what to do with suspend cards is really cool. But the one that I was thinking even more for Modern, Skewer the Critics.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I have this whole, line of thinking where the red decks of the future are just going to be so about one casting cost cards, and I think Skewer the Critics it just fits right in. I think like it will be better than Rift Bolt a good percentage of the time, and then like no worse than Rift Bolt most of the time.
So Skewer the Critics is the Rift Bolt variant. It's 2 and a red, deal 3 damage to any target, just like Rift Bolt. But instead of having Suspend 1 for R, it has Spectacle R. You may cast this card for its Spectacle cost if an opponent lost life this turn.
Yeah, so I think the reason that it'll be more exciting than Rift Bolt a lot. By the way, they're probably both going to get played at as 4-ofs in at least some decks. The reason is like Rift Bolt, it has this awesome superpower, which is that it can get around Chalice of the Void. That's one of the things that's good about it. But like most of the time, you don't want to be casting it for 3, right? So people suspend it, which also gives the opponent ability to plan. So if you're suspending Rift Bolt on turn 1, they just don't play their bird into that, right? But a lot of the time, that's just the play that you're going to make with the burn deck because your hand was a certain way. Skewer the Critics helps you to do like one of these atomic dump my hand turns in a way that Rift Bolt doesn't. Like if you're going to try to do one of these, like I'm unloading 4 or 5 cards out of my hand to just try to kill the opponent, Rift Bolt usually have to pay retail for. Skewer the Critics, if I get you with a Lava Spike, now my Skewer the Critics is a Lava Spike.
Yeah, or a Lightning Bolt, really.
Yeah, it's much
I think
better.
Skewer the Critics this is a 4-of immediately for modern burn decks. Definitely. Like I think the number of flex spots has gone way down because of how much you're going to have to play for Skewer the Critics in such decks. I think this card looks great in Standard too, though.
Oh, I agree. Completely agree.
Like it's very just. I mean, it's not like 3 is some magical number where it's like, oh my god, finally we can do 3 damage or whatever. But like the price is right, man.
Oh yeah. I have nothing to contribute beyond that statement. It is exactly right. I would actually go so far as to think that the modern burn decks are going to consolidate in color, right? So some people play 3 colors. Some people are playing mostly like kind of 2-color Inspiring Vantage decks, and I would guess that there's a consolidation to straight red, except for a different card that was spoiled this week, which is actually in Gruul. So this is actually taking Modern in a different direction. What do you think about Cinder Vines?
So Cinder Vines is red-green enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinder Vines deals 1 damage to that player. And you can pay 1 and sacrifice Cinder Vines to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Cinder Vines deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So are you talking like getting a little bit of that Eidolon of the Great Revel action in a more durable form, having some anti-combo measure, and then just having sort of some Smash to Smithereens built-in main deck for free?
So
I was saying the Smash to Smithereens, it's the red-green one, but you know what I mean.
I'm not even sure that I would main deck this, but I think this card is like paradigm shifting for red decks in Burn, red decks in Modern. I just really have to think about how to incorporate this because I think it is very, very good. So yeah, on its face,
I think you make a good point. I think this looks incredible in that context, actually.
like it's very Eidolonish, and I'm not sure if you would main deck because it's horrendous against humans, right? So it's not very good against Merfolk. I wouldn't necessarily want to play it main deck, but it's incredibly powerful against storm type combo decks, against any of these spell based decks. It gives you it's so good against blue red, even when they go into Empyrean mode, because it's built in anti Empyrean. So, like, imagine just having this in play against Matness, right? Like, his game plan is to shoot this with a Nature's Claim, right? So, okay, he shoots it with a Nature's Claim, has to take damage just to begin with, but now you could just, like, dorkify one of the artifacts he has in play, which isn't the best thing in the world. Nobody's saying, like, randomly getting, his Ichor Wellspring or whatever that's sitting there is the best thing you want. But you're getting way more value than you were going to get before. And you're slowing him down, and you did extra damage. You probably did 3 damage or something, and took out a permanent, and took out another spell from their hand. Like, I'm not sure what the sum total of that is, but it changes the approach that burn decks can have to a variety of different sideboarded opponents. Besides which, like, this is also awesome against some versions of blue-white, right? Like, in addition to, like, just being a really annoying threat for them to deal with because they have all these opts or whatever, you can just shoot their Search for Escanta, or you can shoot their, if they have an Oblivion Ring variant. Like, it's just a randomly, utility-bearing card that you would never bring, like, Shattering Spree in against them. But this is, like, very, very good, where Shattering Spree would be very, very unplayable.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this card's a big player in Modern to come. And depending on what Standard looks like, it's not like it's out of the question. The card's power level seems high.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Dude, what do you think of Kaya's Wrath? White, black, sorcery, destroy all creatures, period. And now you're like, okay, what's the drawback since it costs 4? The drawback is you have to gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way.
Obviously, it's going to be a player, right? So, forecasting costs Wrath for Standard. The only question is, can I make my mana produce 2 black? There's already Esper Shells and some Mardu decks and stuff. Like, people are going to want to play this, and you just get a bonus, right? Like, if you're playing, like, we were just talking about a black-white Knights deck, right? And sometimes you have to Wrath.
Well, it doesn't have to be Knights. I'm talking about a black-white Angel of Grace deck. Maybe it has Knights, maybe it doesn't. This card's a great turn 4 play. If your turn 5 is going to be Angel of Grace.
Sure. Yeah, it's awesome. This card screams tournament staple to me.
Absolutely. This card's gonna, like, this is like a candidate to, like, this could actually show up in Modern for sure. Like, in terms of Standard, though, just getting a hard Wrath for 4 is game changing.
Absolutely.
That's so fast and strong and heavy hitting. I think that this is going to really change what it means to be playing with what kind of fast aggro decks people are playing,
Yeah, I don't know. Like, if you think about, like, the tension that Settle the Wreckage put on the format, where, like, you'd have the opponent thinking about how many guys they're going to attack with, people, like, altering their sideboards. We've seen, quote, mono-white decks with a mountain in the sideboard because they were kind of exploit somebody with Settle the Wreckage. This completely changes that paradigm at 4, right? Like,
totally.
People are like, all right, I got to worry about Clarion at 3, Settle at 4. Cleansing Nova is not even a popular card. I mean, people play it sometimes, right? But it's not really that popular of a card. I think Chaos Wrath is going to be as much as a 4 of in a lot of decks that can cast it. Oh,
yeah. Extremely. One of the most popular staples in this set. There's a different Orzhov card, though, that's a little more niche, but wow, is it, like, inspiring from a power standpoint. Ethereal Absolution is 4 white-black enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1. And you can pay 2 a white and a black and exile target creature card or target card from an opponent's graveyard. If it was a creature card, you get a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying.
which is in fact a 2/2 creature, right? Because Ethereal Absolution gives your creatures +1/+1. I think this card is really powerful. Was one of the applications that might not be obvious is just you cast it on 6 and you just execute people's March tokens or whatever else they've got if they're
and lock them out forever.
Yeah, just Dunsville.
Curse of Death's Hold was only 1 mana cheaper, and it didn't have the ability to make 2/2s. It didn't anthem the rest of your board, and you could only have 1 in play.
Yeah, I think
you can play multiple Ethereal Absolutions.
I think this card is quite possibly. I mean, I think 4 of is probably excessive, but certainly greater than 2 of. In the same way that we see the what's the artifact? I'm blanking for a second. The
Immortal Sun.
The same way that we see the Immortal Sun at 6. Like this card is very the Immortal Sun, right? So like the Immortal Sun, we have this buffing ability. This neuters a different thing, right? The Immortal Sun turns off Planeswalkers, but that doesn't have any text if they don't have a Planeswalker in play. But a lot of people have creatures, right? Whether you're killing their creatures outright, you are doing other things, right? Like you are, for example, pulling a Crackling Drake into Lightning Strike range, like if that matters to you, like the ability to deal 3 instead of 4. You're pulling Lyra into Lava Coil range, just as an example. If you have 2 of these in play, you nuke every Arclight Phoenix in their deck, right? Like that is a big game to have 2 of these in play against red-blue.
That said, I think that this card is free. I personally think this card is going to be much more of a 1 or 2 of, just because I think that even though it's fun to stack them, some of the power, a meaningful amount of the power is coming from this token making ability, and the second one you have in play isn't adding anything there.
Yeah, that doesn't. I mean,
it makes some 3/3s, but you got the Anthem. Yeah, but I think this is going to be much more of a 1 or 2. I mean, there's going to be times where you do other numbers, but it's hard. The cards are so powerful right now. Having too many 6s is somewhat dicey.
Oh, I mean, that's true for any 6s, no matter how good they are, though, right? Like, but I don't know. I think we don't know the constitution of what the ramp decks might look like, for example. So my current imagination of what a ramp deck looks like for standard is Naya. But what if it's Abzan? Then you have a completely different set of incentives at the top. You get way faster sweepers, right? So, I mean, all respect to Star of Extinction. It costs 7. Chaos Wrath is very, very much better for just making sure you don't get brained by a 7/6 hexproof than stalling on 6. So
I can't wait for the first person who top 8's a major event with Chaos Wrath alongside Niv Mizzet. That's going to be a nice one.
Oh wow, that sounds like a challenge.
What do you think of Collision Colossus? So for 1 and a Gruul, deal 6 damage to target creature with flying. Already, that's interesting. For 1 and a green, kill flyers and deal 6 to a flyer is pretty close to that. 1 and a green, kill a flyer is shown up at times, and 1 and a red. The red would love to buy something like that. That's really interesting, right? But the real juice is that for red-green, instant, target creature gets +4/+2 and trample until end of turn.
Yeah, this card is pretty cool, right? The collision side, you're right. Red would love this. I think in the same way that it plays, it's an instant, right? And it can knock Lyra out of the sky at instant speed. The red decks have largely been kind of priced into playing Fight with Fire for that job. And that's still a good card, but this is just another thing they could do. The Colossus side, that's a pretty good kind of mana to result conversion, right?
It's kind of just Gore Clan Rampager as a split card, right? But instead of so first of all, Colossus is just much better. Even though it can be countered, you can do it defensively or in response to burn spells. So like Colossus is just already amazing. But then instead of having as a backup plan a 4/4 Trampler, you've got Collision, which gives you meaningful removal against a variety of threats, like Lyra Dawnbringer, for instance.
Yeah, or like I think that red decks often get overloaded in kind of this position of, the opponent is like 3/4 hexproof, 5/5.
So what do you think of Collision Colossus versus the other hybrid split card, Thrash Threat? Thrash is the Gruul. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. And then Threat is 2 red-green. Create a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample.
Well, I think I like Collision Colossus better. And the reason for that is red is like sometimes gets like really, really bottlenecked in its ability to deal with large creatures. And right now, it has basically no solution whatsoever to kind of the 6/6 black vampire for 5. So
yeah,
like this is like a real way to deal with that card. And
kill the Doom Whisperer, that demon. Yeah.
So like I just for that reason, like it has no other tools, right? Like. You're usually just like, all right, I'm just going to block with Rekindling Phoenix and like hope to be in a situation where I can throw a strike at it and hope they don't kill my Phoenix Egg. I mean, Thrash is cool. I guess I like the threat side a lot, right? So
I like the Thrash side. That's the part I'm into.
Yeah. I like the threat side.
See, I think threat. Maybe I would pay 3 for a 4/4 Trampler, but I'm not paying 4. Except I appreciate it as a backup plan. But Thrash, being able to have my creature, like it's like what's a good way to put it? Keep in mind, if you're thinking through the lens of a red deck, Thrash is not going to look that attractive. But if you're looking at it through the lens of a green deck that happens to splash red.
Yeah.
And that's to say nothing of if you can pair it with some if you just have a few creatures in your deck that have Death Touch. That's really exciting.
Oh yeah, I mean, but any green deck that's otherwise creature poor, I can see that being good. When I say I like threat, I mean I'm priced in for Thrash, right? Nobody's just playing the threat side. I like the back. I think that's a very good backup, though. That's kind of where I'm coming at it. But still, if I only had to pick one, I'm on Team Collision. Doom Whisperer Dead is more important to me right now than the overall better abilities on Thrash Threat, because I think both of those cards are theoretically better than Collision.
All right, man. What do you think? Where should we finish to finish strong here?
How about? I don't think we talked about Rakdos the Showstopper on the actual show yet, did we?
No, but we're gonna need a little bit more time to dive into that. That we don't want to stop the show with the Showstopper, do we?
All right. What
about Domri Chaosbringer? It's got to be.
All right, let's go Domri. I mean, Planeswalkers for L. Domri, Chaosbringer, a 4 casting cost, 5 loyalty, red-green Planeswalker, legendary Planeswalker Domri. 3 abilities on this one. +1, add red or green. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, it gains Riot. Wow, that ability. -3, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Also a very good ability. And then -8, from 5 to start. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of each end step, create a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample.
Okay. So, I mean, this one's got some pedigree with regards to the name Domri, but in starting to analyze these, where's the mode that you start with on this one, right? Like as a baseline, the -3 is at least a 3-mana spell that's probably just a little not quite enough. And the fact that you can pay, like, for 1 mana more, you're getting this 2-cost Planeswalker, I don't think that's, like, inherently good enough. You're going to have to get a little bit more juice from a different ability. The +1 ability of get a red or a green, and if that mana is spent to play a creature spell, gains Riot. Now that's where Domri gets his butter breaded, or his bread buttered.
Yeah, so I think that ability is fantastic. The tension I see with Domri is if you're casting Domri on turn 4, I don't know, like, how good can you do with the +1 on turn 4? I mean, like, I don't know, like a Firebrand or a Llanowar Elf? Like,
no, I mean, you can also play it on turn 4 and then just shock something.
Okay, that's a good point.
You don't have to get the Riot. Remember, it's a bonus on creatures. But, like, I think a lot of the time you're going to be very happy to just drop it and minus the first time and then just plus from there on out.
Okay, so if you just play Domri and then minus the first time, so you retain a 2 loyalty Planeswalker and then potentially draw 2 cards, that's fine. Nobody's, like, writing home for that, though. But I think, like, when you consider both of those abilities together, then the card becomes pretty exciting. I can't believe that I'm saying this. I didn't even think about just shocking with the +1. I was thinking about, like, well, dropping a guy with it. I think that makes the card way better. And, well, obviously, right? That doubles its utility on the +1.
Yeah, I think that it's just the ability the versatility, of this card, I think is just going to be fantastic. But I also think that this is a great source of +1/+1 counters.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. You think, like, this could make Teamer good? I know you love Teamer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in for Teamer, but I don't know what this specifically is doing for me. Are you just talking about because of any potential +1/+1 counters from Simic?
Oh, yeah.
Like things that care?
Yeah, if you're rioting up those +1/+1 counters, you might just win the game. Right? Like, it's possible.
Yeah. Well, I know this is supposed to be the note we end on, but I think it's pretty straightforward. It's just going to end up being a question of what sort of decks need this, but he's not a paradigm shifting card. He's just like a quality card for decks that are kind of chunky and play a lot of creatures.
All right. Super exciting stuff, and we've still got dozens of cards to come from the new Ravnica set.
Yeah, and we've only scratched the surface here. I mean, at this point, the spoilers have been coming so strong that there's a ton of stuff we still have to talk about besides Kaya's Wrath.
But that's your pick of the week.
Totally.
Yeah, I think Electro Dominance might be more exciting, but Kaya's Wrath is probably going to win more games.
All right, awesome, dude. I'll see you next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, it's a jailer hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind.